And we are back. Welcome back to the Auto Authorities podcast. My name is Jay, coming to you live. And we have our favorite special guest, Gerald Bentley with Dealership Rescue and his wonderful podcast, Wrestling with Sales. And Gerald always has really good inside information for us. And that's why he is here today. So, Gerald is standing by, and
Yep.
if you guys are ready to do this, I'm ready to do this. Let's go.
Have you ever felt like you were taken for a ride while buying, selling, or repairing your car? Well, not anymore. I'm Jay, and this is the podcast to tell you what to watch out for, whether you are buying, selling, or repairing your car. With over 26 years of automotive experience, we are the Auto Authorities. This podcast is sponsored by iAutoAgent.com. We're real estate agents for cars.
Booyah. Welcome back to the Auto Authorities podcast. My name is Jay, coming to you live. Before we get going, and you have maybe noticed that we have not been able to produce a podcast in the last 2 weeks. Unfortunately, my wife had to have emergency surgery, and I had to be the good husband for her, and I had to put the podcast to the side. This is, real life stuff. You're talking to a real person. You're listening to a real person on the other end of this. And we all have problems in life. And truly, sometimes they hit you way faster than you expect. And, the main thing is I'm able to take care of my family. She's doing a lot better. I appreciate all the prayers and the continued prayers to keep healing her and getting her better. But before we get going and we meet Gerald Bentley with Dealership Rescue and Wrestling with Sales, I really want to thank iAutoAgent, that wonderful company that sponsors the podcast, the Auto Authorities podcast. iAutoAgent are real estate agents for cars. They literally take care of everything for selling your car for you. You never have to go meet strange people. You get to keep the car while you're selling it, and we'll get you more than if you went to the dealership or potentially even doing it on your own. And when you're ready for that perfect car, we'll find that car for you. We'll vet that car. We'll make sure you're working with a reputable dealership. We'll handle the entire transaction, ensure its reliability, and you simply just go in and pick up your car. And if you're just tuning in, we are on multiple different sites. We are on 19 different channels if you want to just listen to us on the way to work. iTunes, Pandora, Google, you name it, you can listen to us. You can simply go to theautoauthorities.com. That's theautoauthorities.com. You can find us all those different channels. You can even send us a nice little message, anything that you want. If you want to send us like a nice little sweet message, or you want to make a comment on our show, you can do that. If you want to watch us live, you can go to the Facebook group page and click join group. You can literally be with our amazing family, is what I call it. It's a worldwide family that we have, not just nationwide, but worldwide. And you can also go to the YouTube page, The Auto Authorities. It's the YouTube page. You can click the subscribe button. You can click the notify button, and you can watch it recorded if you'd like. And today we're going to be talking about the market shift, or maybe we're not, because we have the one, the only Gerald Bentley from Dealership Rescue and Wrestling with Sales, his YouTube page and his podcast. Gerald, welcome back to the show. One of our
Thanks.
very favorite guests.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad to hear things are getting a little better for you. That's obviously a challenge, and it's there's plenty of things that can weigh you down, but there are real life challenges that really kind of supersede all that. Can't let stresses in your job get you too much. When take a look and say, hey, everybody's healthy and everybody's getting things accomplished. That's really the most important thing.
Yeah, it was hard because I literally for well over 2 years now, we've been doing the podcast every single week. We haven't missed a week. And then, life just hits you really hard. But man, it's important to be there for the family. And that's what I have. And It's awesome to have you back, and I've been wanting to bring you on because there's so many crazy things going on in the automotive business. But before we get going, Gerald, why don't you just let everybody know, for those of you that have not heard Gerald, what's your background and why should we listen to you?
Sure. Well, I used to do morning drive radio in Cleveland, and when radio got all concentrated, ended up moving to Kansas City. I've been a dealership manager in various positions, really all across the dealerships for over 20 years. And I've started a consulting company, Dealership Rescue, talk to dealerships all around the country. Also do a training podcast, Wrestling with Sales, which really talks about how do you find success? How do you have a championship level at your job, and talking with people who have been incredibly successful, because there's things you can pull out from really anything that's applicable to sales. We've had on DC Glenn, the Brain Supreme from Tag Team, talking about how he got back going with the Geico commercial, the scoop, there it is. Had on trainers from New Japan Pro Wrestling. We just had on Medusa, who's a multiple time WWE World Champion, WWE Hall of Famer, and the first female monster truck champion, talking about what she does to be a champion, how she achieves success. And then, various automotive programs, vendors, and sales trainers, just to get a real 360 view, because you can learn something from really anyone. And if you can pull something that makes you a little bit better, that's a win.
Yeah, you have a very, very unique podcast. There's no doubt about it. I think there's, even if you're not looking like to buy a car or anything, and you just want to learn about sales. I mean,
Yeah, or
Gerald
just
really
personal
knows.
success.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And today, really, what I want to talk about to start with, and I'm going to share some stats and see what you think about this, Gerald. But
Sure.
I pulled some stats. I want to talk about some used car predictions to start with. Manheim Used Vehicle Index. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, it basically lets you know, it's a single figure to represent the overall used car values. That's what it is, and it rose from to 238.1, which was down 5.8% from March and up 3.6 from last month. So we saw a spike
Hmm.
in prices coming into March. But what's interesting is that they said that people also felt good about the economy as a whole, but didn't think it was a great time to buy a car because but it was still better than last year.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And then the overall consumer confidence went down compared to the same time last year. So the consumers aren't as confident about our economy. And then the people to plan to buy cars in the next 6 months, but not as many as they did in January. So there were more people in January that was planning on buying a car, but now they're not looking to buy a car in the next 6 months. What do you think about that information?
Well, I think those are all pretty accurate. What's interesting is, if you look back to the beginning of the year, Cox Automotive, which owns Manheim, their projections were for a massive decrease in used car values. They were saying in January, okay, everybody sell every car you have, sell them, sell them, sell them. The prices are going to plummet. Well, while they were saying that, if you look at the results of the vehicles running through Manheim's auto auction, which is the biggest auto auction group in the country, all part of the same company, the actual sales were going up. So they were saying one thing based on analytics and projections, but reality was telling you the opposite. Now you're seeing reality and the analytics meet. Because if you take a look at dealerships don't have the 100, 175 used cars that you'd want to have. You and I both worked at dealerships for years, and we know that the old school thought was, okay, you want to sell 100 used cars, you need to carry 200. You want to sell 300 cars, well, you better keep buying every week. You better be buying, because you need to have run 600 cars through your lot over the course of the month.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that. I was looking at Longo Toyota's website yesterday, the biggest Toyota dealership in the country. They've had months where they sell 1,700 cars. 1 month, they were selling more cars than a good sized dealership in the middle of the country would sell for the year. They had 83 cars on the ground from a
Wow.
dealership that historically sold over 1,000 a month. They had 83 available. So if you compress the supply that much,
Yep.
what's going to happen to the price? It's not going
Yep.
to go down, it's going to go up. Now, at a certain point, you hit a ceiling. You can only go so high, and it has to start creeping down.
Yep.
Historically, and I know we were talking about this earlier, the historic average used car payment was $440. That was an all-time high in 2018. It usually is like 350 to 400. After COVID, it was $777 a month last year for the average used car. And that's not a tenable position. That's going to drive people out of the market. So what they're saying, absolutely true. I mean, if you're making here, let's say a young couple, you're both making about $30,000. Say you got a $1,200 a month rent, you'll barely qualify for a $700 car payment, let alone two. So just the nature of what's out there is going to depress the market. You're getting ready for college, the end of high school, college starts. That's when you'd usually sell a bunch of Corollas, Civics, Cruises, um, Elantras, Sentras, those kind of cars, 10, 12, 14,000. Do a search of any major city on cars.com and just look for cars under 20,000. I think you'll be amazed how few there are. And then if you limit that search to under 20,000 and under 80,000 miles, you're going to find virtually nothing.
I think you're spot on. In fact, I'll share something here in a second, and it's interesting because what what you're saying is absolutely true. And if you find like, especially, so I'm telling my
Have you ever felt like you were taken for a ride while buying, selling, or repairing your
sorry about that. If you, I'm telling my team like anything under $20,000 on an SUV, that's really because everybody wants a $400 a month payment. They
Sure.
still want that payment.
Hmm.
And then on, let's just say four-door sedan, like coupe cars, midsize, whatever, and compact cars, you got to be under 15 grand because the interest rates have gone up so
Sure.
much. Which is what's interesting, though, is my question. What you think on this is that okay? So now the interest rates have gone up. People are going for lesser expensive cars. That's a fact. So it is squeezing that market. But what about these cars that are 40 to $50,000 cars? You got to think that they're gonna have to start dropping um, in value to get people in those, don't you think?
You would think so. I mean, here, a Silverado,
Hmm.
like new Silverados, they're going to take a hit because there are some incentives on the new ones.
Hmm.
I think it's vehicle by vehicle.
It is.
If you have a Jeep Gladiator and you're looking to trade it, probably a bad time because they're taking $10,000 off new Gladiators. It's the one vehicle out there that just can't be given away.
I I have
So,
like we have had multiple people come to us that want to sell these vehicles, and then they're
yeah.
like, "Oh, it's so cool," and I'm like, "Yeah, but they can't sell them."
Oh,
So
they are neat, but they made too many of them.
they made way too many of
Yeah.
them, and oh, that's
The
funny.
same thing they did with the Hellcat. When the Hellcat came out, people were buying the Hellcats to park them and save them as a collector's item and turn around and sell them down the road because there was going to be this massive scarcity. Well, Chrysler saw that they were selling them all at sticker and said, you know what? Forget this limited production. Let's make more.
Yeah.
And, they devalued the car down to the point that within a year and a half, it went from people buying them to park them and turn around and sell them 4 years later because they thought they were going to make a fortune, to selling them for invoice minus incentives.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And for those of you that are just joining us, we're talking with the Gerald Bentley. He has a company called Dealership Rescue, and he has a podcast called Wrestling with Sales. And Gerald's been a guest several times for us, and he has an extensive experience in this industry. And it's great when I can sit down and I can literally talk like real facts, not the crap that you hear on the radio or the shit that you read on the internet. It is not real a lot of times, and this is straight from the source. Like, he knows the inside, I know the inside, and sometimes we'll agree and sometimes we don't agree on things. But what we're really talking about today is there has been an uptick in prices for used cars, but it's interesting because now, Gerald, the wholesale supply. So this is from Cox Automotive. The
Mhm.
wholesale supply is down to 38 days in March 2023, and it was 43 days in February. And wholesale supply basically means how many vehicles, like how fast that they're selling,
Yeah,
basically. And then March of 22, interesting stat, it was 47 days. So the same year over year, it's down 9 days. So they're selling faster. Here's another interesting statistic for you, too. Out of all the different categories, from vans and pickups and luxury cars, um, pickups actually got more expensive.
hmm
And they were the only one, but luxury cars lost the most. SUVs lost 2.7%. And I think this goes hand in hand what we're talking about, because as interest rates continue to rise, those really expensive cars are going to be the ones that are hit the most.
sure.
And in the midsize, only lost 1.4%, and compact lost 2.2, 2.2%. So it's very interesting. But really, what I want to get into is some fun stuff here. Um, a lot of people are wondering, like, what's going on with the new cars and what is the availability of new cars? What are you seeing right now, Gerald?
Well, not good. Um,
Yeah.
at major domestic dealerships, just talking GM and Ford, you're probably looking at about a quarter to maybe a fifth of what they would normally stock historically. So very limited, very much skewed to the expensive. You can get more domestic cars. You have a better chance of getting a Ford or a General Motor, a Chevy, a Buick, a GMC than you do any import brand. Because if you look at a Toyota lot, at a Subaru lot, at a Honda lot, at a Hyundai lot, at a Kia lot, they probably have almost nothing. And if they do have something, it's going to be an expensive SUV because that's what's being made. The only exceptions that I've seen are Nissan dealers and Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram dealers. But even Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram dealers, it's very, very heavily skewed to the expensive cars.
Yep.
Because I mean, they just killed the Cherokee. So their best-selling midsize SUV, it's done. They make that here in Missouri. They made it in St. Louis. They're done. They built the last one. They're bringing out the Dodge Hornet, but that's not released yet. So you go to a Dodge dealership, they may have 300 vehicles. 150 of them are going to be Rams. They'll have 50 Gladiators, 50 Grand Wagoneers, because everybody wants a 9-seat, 8 mile a gallon in the city SUV for a mortgage. It's $100,000 vehicle. How many people are
Yeah.
going to buy them? And then a few Renegades, a few Compasses, and there you go. What's missing, and I think it really relates well to the stat you said about compact and mid-sized cars. Try to find a mid-sized sedan. Maybe you can find a Malibu or two. You may, if you're really lucky, find a Camry. You won't find an Accord. You won't find a Sonata. You won't find Elantras. Corollas basically don't exist. The biggest Toyota dealership in the country had one available for sale. And this is college student time. This is high school graduation. This is going to college. This is Corolla season. They're not there. So why have the used cars not dropped in value? Because you can't get a new one. To the point, if you go look at an auction, look at obviously not everybody has access to this, but look at a Manheim auction run and look at the buy it now price on a Corolla, an LE Corolla with 75,000 miles. It's over new sticker.
And that's
Supply and demand.
unbelievable. Yeah, and you're spot on. I actually have the data from the actual manufacturers and Toyota. So this is days supply, and for all you guys that don't know what that means, it means how many vehicles are available, and the lower the number, that means that there's not very many available, and the greater the number, that means there's a lot more available. And the day supply for Toyota is just right around 25 days. And then if you go on the flip side, Chrysler and Jeep, Chrysler is 135 days. But I think you made a really good point, and I think people need to know this, is that on the new vehicles right now, they are producing very expensive ones. Now, number one,
Hmm.
that's where the manufacturers make most of their money on these expensive vehicles. That's where they're making
Sure.
bank. I mean, they're making, I don't even know what the profit margin is on $100,000 vehicle. I don't know if you know, but it's up there. And so they're like, "Oh, well, we don't need to make those cars because people will
Hmm.
just order them. We'll make these and we'll give those to the dealerships and let them see if they can sell them."
Yeah.
It's really a game right now.
Yeah. Because I mean, really, how much more does it cost to make uh, a Dodge Ram or a Silverado than it would cost to make a Jeep Compass or a Malibu? Probably not that much more, really.
No, no, and I agree with that. It's the we'll get into some. I want to hear your thoughts here a little bit later. Um, but in your mind too, so I have my opinions on this. I want to see what you think.
Hmm.
What do you think about leasing?
Oh, right now, it's a horrible idea. In general, in normal times, sure. If you're always going to have a new car, you don't drive a lot of miles. Why not? You're never going to be out of factory warranty. You reduce your overall cost. Your sales tax is rolled into the payment, so you're not coming out of pocket with sales tax. And on most brands, you own the upside, the manufacturer owns the downside. Say the car's value drops over 3 years, you turn it in, you walk away. You can't be upside down. If the car's value goes up, you trade it in, you pocket the equity, you win. So heads I win, tails you lose. So normally it makes perfect sense. But generally speaking, if you take a look at a lease payment should match a 75-month loan payment. 36-month lease and a 75-month loan should be about even. Right now, your 36-month lease payment is still more than a 75-month finance payment. So it's just not a great idea. You're really paying a pretty big penalty to lease it right now in most cases.
That's a huge golden nugget, folks. If you didn't hear what he said, that is a really, really good thing to know. Is that a 36-month lease payment should match a 75-month like normal interest rate. And
Yeah, they
when that
normally are almost equal.
yeah, yeah. And that's very interesting because one of my really good friends is he has an older Lexus, wants to get a new Lexus. He's like, I'm thinking about leasing. I'm like, oh no, 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 you don't want to do that.
No, because certain brands like Lexus, it's going to hold value anyways.
Right.
You may as well finance it because you can always still trade it in.
Yep.
It's not like cars are going to fall off a cliff. There was a lot of people at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, saying, "Oh, everything's going to crater. All the values are going to drop. It's a bubble. The bubble's going to burst." Well, yeah, at some point it has to go down, but there's 9 million less cars out there than should be out there. Enterprise rental car is renting cars with 80,000 miles because they can't get new ones. And that's enterprise.
Yep.
Do you think the manufacturers don't want to sell cars to enterprise?
course they do.
I'm sure they do, but they're not able to get enough to them, so they're having to keep cars that they would have sold years ago.
It's interesting you say that, also because one of our just a business colleague of mine, he wanted to use our vehicle finder program, and he's
Hmm.
like, "Hey, I want to get a. I'm thinking about getting a Jeep
Okay.
or like a Wagoneer or a Ford Expedition."
Okay.
And I said, "Well," he's like, "Well, what do you think I should do?" And I said, "Well, which one do you want?" He goes, "I don't know." Well, as I could, well, I can tell you right now, I contacted one of our preferred Ford dealerships here in St. Louis, and he's like, "It's a 4 month wait on a good day just to get an Expedition." But I said, "If you want a Grand Wagoneer, or you could get one right now."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take your
yeah.
pick. 10,000 off.
But it's also what's interesting is, and I know you know this, but a lot of people don't. When you're where you're getting those huge discounts on those cars, when it comes to remarketing that car, or when you're ready to trade it in, that's all taken into account is the
Hmm.
supply. So if there's a million of them out there, it's going to be really, really hard to sell that vehicle.
Yeah. Well, supply and desirability, right? I mean, if you
Yeah.
can't sell it new with special rates, with a ton of incentives, how are you going to sell it pre-owned? You're going to sell it pre-owned really, really cheap. Is the Grand Wagoneer going to go the way of the Jeep Commander?
Oh
The
my God.
Commander, I think, lasted 3 or 4 years, and it was
I
the
remember.
last time Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram tried a big 3-row SUV. It
Yeah.
it literally got 8 miles a gallon in the city.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was 8 and 14, 8 in the city and a efficient 14 miles a gallon on the highway. People who bought them loved them, but they were almost unsaleable.
Well, I'll tell you this. I have so much more I want to talk about. Gerald, would you be willing to come back for a part two on this? Because I want to talk more about what's going on with all these like Carvana and Vroom, the future of car dealerships. But I really want to hit electric cars. I want to see what
Sure.
you think about electric cars. Would you come back and talk with us again?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to Gerald Bentley with Dealership Rescue and Wrestling with Sales podcast. It's awesome to have you, Gerald. I can't wait for you to come back so we can talk about part two next week. And I will, everybody, I really appreciate any prayers, and send me messages, and take your, like, if you want to like make comments about this, let us know what you think, or if you have maybe even any questions, because Gerald will answer those personally. I'll answer those personally,
Oh,
because
sure.
we know this business better than anybody. How long have you been in the business, Gerald?
Since '02,
Oh, two, and I've been in it
21
since
years.
'96. So I think you're getting some really good information, Gerald. I will see you next week for part two.
Sure.
Take care, everybody. Peace.